Remember when Uncle Bruce spent the night at a haunted house?
I knew now that we were not alone in that house.
Let's go back.
Tamagotchi,
of Y2K.
Welcome back everyone to another yearly tradition on this channel, the Halloween channel surfing video. For anyone who's new here, what this is a compilation of nostalgia clips I came across throughout the year that weren't long enough to warrant an entire video dedicated to them. This is where I get to watch and discuss some of the more interesting things I found. In this video I've got an interview with pagans, a George Hamilton Halloween special, and Elvira hosting a spooky 2-hour block on MTV, and so much more. What are we waiting for? Let the channel surfing begin.
The winner of Holyfield, Bo? Will it be Lennox Lewis, or will it be Razor Ruddock?
If you wear a mask instead of costume makeup, be sure you can see clearly at all times.
That big rock back there, that's the whole ABC Friday night schedule, right over there.
I wasn't sure if I should include this clip or not just because it wasn't all that exciting. However, I watched the full 60 minutes, so I wanted to share a bit of it so it wasn't a complete waste of time. This is Tomorrow with Tom Snyder. It would air right after The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. This particular episode is his 1974 Halloween special where he'll be interviewing members of the occult, and he's ready for some spookies as they sit around a large cauldron and a smoke machine sets the atmosphere.
And get ready not for a good scare, but for a real trip through witchcraft and what Halloween is all about right after these announcements.
The first guest he speaks to is Ed Fitch, who identifies as a witch, and he has a coven. By day, he's an electronics engineer. This made me laugh. I just couldn't help but imagine him at the water cooler talk on Mondays. What did you get up to this weekend, Ed? Well, me and the missus went antiquing, and then we grabbed a nice dinner at that new Italian spot, and then later we summoned Pazuzu. I should also mention that he has a sword and the evilest looking sideburns I've ever seen. The other person Tom interviews is Isaac Bonowitz, who I'm pretty sure is just a fake name for Geddy Lee. I see you, Geddy, you're not fooling anyone. Isaac here is a neo-druid and an author who runs the magazine Nostaka. They get into what's the difference between magic you might see a magician do and the magic carried out by pagans, and Ed tells quite the story from earlier that day.
At the table, well, the table behind us, the center of it burst into flame while we were talking.
As exciting as that may seem, and there should be a follow-up question, Tom seems more interested in something else when it comes to the occult.
Somehow connected with sexual rites and nude people and orgiastic affairs. I really haven't satisfied my curiosity about the sexual implications of paganism. Because how many covens in witchcraft and the religion itself would you say there are where they have orgies?
The fact that Tom's smoking a cigarette while this is all going on just makes it so much better. Unfortunately, Tom isn't going to get any satisfaction and will have to take a cold shower later because Ed and Isaac basically say that's just something you see in movies and not in the real occult. Tom then brings in two more guests, Poke Runyon, a Grand Master of the OTA, and Fred Adams, who is the creator of some pagan organization.
Mr. Fred Adams, who was a social worker and in the occult world has been called by no less an authority than Hans Holzer. I don't know if that's funny or not.
I don't know, Tom. I don't think Fred finds it too funny. By the way, what do you call this haircut? It's got a real Donald Duck vibe going for it. Then we get to see footage of a pagan ritual that you know just reeks of pot and BO. The episode comes to a close with Lady Moira, who brought her coven in to try and transmit their energies through the television to us at home. They do ring around the rosy and all fall down, followed by this.
Not of one, the spell's begun. Not of two, the spell is true. Not of three, may it be.
This is really starting to feel like adult daycare. Also, there's this one guy sitting there that you may want to keep an eye on. Something tells me he may have the urge one day to shoot John Lennon. I joke about this, but honestly it was a pretty frank discussion on religion and was pretty informative if you're ever curious about the occult. The only reason I watched this in the first place was because I had just watched Late Night with the Devil and was getting that vibe from this clip.
Confront history's most famous and bloodthirsty ghoul, Dracula.
If you've been watching my channel for a while now, then you know that I love a good television special. In fact, my very first video on this channel was Al Capone's Vault TV special, and this one here was put on by the same people who did that one. It's called Dracula Live from Transylvania back in 1989, hosted by the tannest man in Hollywood, George Hamilton. He's qualified to host this special because he played Dracula in the 1979 film Love at First Bite. And how do I know this? Well, George reminds you every few minutes throughout the special.
We'll walk where the real Dracula walked. Meet men and women who have followed in his blood-sucking footsteps, and open coffins closed for centuries.
Seems illegal, but I'm DTFO. Down to find out. The entire special was quite interesting and had some educational content. However, George Hamilton hams it up like crazy and isn't one to miss the same jokes over and over again.
Yoo-hoo! Anybody home? Yoo-hoo! Anybody home? Dracula was captured. You never found that original with me. You couldn't need directions. You were the one that was driving. You had been misled us.
He also does this thing where when he's interviewing someone, he can't speak directly to them, but instead he will speak to them while glancing at the camera constantly, or just staring at the camera the whole time. And finally, he loves a good joke about his agent.
I don't care if he's in a meeting. Put me through to him. Look, just have him call me. Yes, it's important. I happen to be one of his bigger clients. What am I talking about? Agents don't have hearts.
Now that we've seen most of what George Hamilton does throughout the special, let's start at the beginning with another George Hamilton bit. He does this bit where no one recognizes him in Transylvania and how he's late for the live special. It's a comedy bit that overstayed its welcome by the 30-second mark, but sticks around for another 5 minutes.
Just put down the cards, will you? You want live, you're gonna get live, okay?
What a rebel, not rehearsed a single time. The first person George interviews is the descendant of the real Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, and he discusses what Solomon Tower was like back in the day, and saying that Transylvania was so beautiful back then that you'd call it the California of the Middle Ages. They get a bit into vampires and pop culture, a little bit on Bela Lugosi, and the fact that a survey found 27% of people believe it is possible for vampires to exist. Then they get into a bit about women's sexual attraction to vampires, and then George hits on a woman who keeps popping in and out of the special.
Do you think it's every woman's fantasy to be hypnotized by a powerful man?
After the commercial, we talk to the chairman of the Dracula Society, which is a history preservation society. They talk a bit about who Bram Stoker was and get into his Dracula novel.
Therefore, he must have been writing it in a white-hot fever of sexual frustration.
Calm yourself. Bram Stoker, more like Bram Stroker, am I right? Oh no, I'm becoming George Hamilton. We also get to see a couple live television flubs, like the director shouting for everyone to be quiet.
Quiet.
And this awkward pause where I can only assume someone forgot their lines.
The sources of his material.
Really?
They go on to discuss that the original manuscript for Dracula, then called The Undead, was found in an abandoned barn by a couple in Pennsylvania. We learn a bit more about Vlad the Impaler and Elizabeth Bathory, a woman who killed hundreds of virgins so she could bathe in their blood because she believed it was the secret to eternal youth. And by the way, George Hamilton takes all this information with the utmost respect and sincerity.
That's sort of like the pizza I had last night.
Then comes the moment I know I've been waiting for. They open up a coffin, but it's empty. I'm getting some real Geraldo Rivera flashbacks with this one.
When we return, we'll meet real-life vampires.
They're lying about meeting real-life vampires, by the way, and not in the way you may think. Author Noreen Dresser interviews two people who are blacked out to the cameras. One is a self-proclaimed vampire, and the other is what they call a donor. That's right, only one real-life vampire. This isn't vampires plural, lies. The modern-day vampires use syringes to drink blood, but I think they should be using their vampire teeth. Isn't that what all the fun is about?
I'm a vampire. Kill me. Kill me.
I was sitting here watching this and wondering who in their right mind would agree to have their blood drank by some random stranger.
Well, I met a woman. I did find that it gave me a pleasurable feeling.
There it is. I've got to say though, drinking some stranger's blood at the height of the AIDS epidemic is quite the extreme sport. All in all, it was an interesting television special if you can get past the cringeworthy George Hamilton jokes. I mean, if you're still watching this and can get through my cringeworthy jokes, you'll do just fine.
Against rot. And nothing fights rot like Armor All Protectant. It penetrates surfaces.
Experts at Magic Manor have everything you'll need this year, including actual character masks from famous motion pictures. And they can show...
I was surprised to learn that Mike and Sandy had heard of the place before.
This is a kids' Halloween show from 1962 WFLA Tampa Bay with Uncle Bruce. If you have a fear of both clowns and puppets, well then have I got something really traumatic for you. It stars Pastor Bruce Roderick along with Barney the Clown and two puppets named Little Mike and Sandy, who Uncle Bruce keeps referring to as the kids, which had me quite unsettled throughout. The show has some really spooky imagery, and I ended up watching it alone at night in bed, which probably wasn't the best choice. It starts out with the four of them out on a road trip when they discover the old Cypress Mansion, which is rumored to be haunted, so they decide to spend Halloween night there. By the way, there's a few shots of the puppets standing, and I've always found that creepy. I don't want to see puppets standing on their own, so I can imagine their little legs chasing me down some hallway. The group goes inside and explores a bit, but it's getting late despite it clearly still being daylight out, and Mike and Sandy go to sleep. Uncle Bruce decides to do some exploring himself. Barney the Clown decides to have lunch in the middle of the night, and a hand comes out and grabs his food. Uncle Bruce and Barney head up into the attic.
I knew now that we were not alone in that house.
They hear a noise and rush out of there, and they get chased through the house by men in sheets, Scooby-Doo style. The puppets wake up like The Undertaker and see what's going on. Turns out the two ghosts were just sheriff deputies Charlie and Eddie. Probably not the first time they donned a white sheet with holes in it. By the way, Charlie over here looks like he holds the title of the best watermelon seed spitter in town. They pack up their things and head home, but leaving off with an ominous line from Uncle Bruce about the house.
Leaving the old house standing quiet and empty, haunted by nothing more than the memories of a time long ago when the sound of happy voices once rang through the halls.
Parents, set boundaries, and it's time to be home. Carry a flashlight for extra safety, and let's all have a safe Halloween.
To my knowledge, this is the only combination house of horror and restaurant that I've ever heard of.
This is a quick clip out of Minnesota with Steve and Sharon, who review restaurants in the area. On this episode, they're reviewing a spooky restaurant named Dino's Other World. It's a haunted-themed restaurant complete with all the Universal monsters and residing inside a house built in 1900. However, the monsters aren't just limited to Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. Kids can also see this interesting-looking version of the Cookie Monster, who in this clip kind of looks like a giant blue dick. They also show him later with a kid, and whoever's inside that costume is very short. Anyway, Steve here has an interesting way of describing the shrimp there.
They are large, firm, and very good.
The monster-themed restaurant opened in 1977. The prices are wild to look back on. The lunch buffet was only $2.50, barbecue ribs $4.95, and a steak and lobster combination for only $7.95. Steve and Sharon go on to interview patrons of the restaurant who only have kind words to say about it.
Because it's worth coming. Yes, it's worth the trip.
Unfortunately, it isn't worth the trip anymore as it burned down in January of 1981, which honestly, for a horror restaurant, is one hell of a metal way to close your business.
They are large, firm, and very good.
Sometimes 1-800-COLLECT can be a lifesaver.
Starting it off with post ghosties. I don't have any friends to play with.
Another quickie for you all that I came across. This is a clip from 1970s Disney Showtime where the Osmonds and Kurt Russell toured Disneyland in California. However, because this is Halloween, we're just going to take a look at the section on the Haunted Mansion. Kurt Russell does a voiceover explaining how the models were built and how it took 10 years to complete the ride. Looks like me after 2 burritos from Taco Bell. They get into the mechanics and how they use these discs in order to create realistic movements of the characters, each disc controlling a different body part. I love this part because it looks like the animatronic is kind of like, the hell are you doing with my hands? After getting into the details of the ride, we return to the Osmonds and Kurt Russell in line for the Haunted Mansion before hopping on.
Look at the ship in that picture.
When my family and I went to Disney World in Orlando, we rode the Haunted Mansion. My dad has epilepsy, but said it would be fine for him to ride. Well, partway through the ride, it broke down and my dad was stuck sitting right next to this flashing picture frame. He covered his eyes until the ride got started up again, but it was a funny story of how Disney tried to murder my father.
Kurt, how would you like to be here alone and hear a voice calling you from the other end of the hall?
They're not for witches or guys in stitches. When these kid meals are
Just for kids.
Think of going anywhere, darling, because I've got Lou Reed, Alice Cooper, and the Blow Monkeys coming right up on MTV.
What better way to end this year's channel surfing video with the queen of Halloween herself, Elvira. If you watch my channel, chances are you already know who Elvira is, but for the young folks, She became famous as a presenter of B horror movies on a local Los Angeles station. Back when there were hundreds of horror presenters, she was arguably the most famous. And she was known for two main things.
They are large, firm, and very good.
No, she was known for horror and her charm, obviously. Get your head out of the gutter. This is her 1986 MTV Halloween special. She hosted a 2-hour block showing spooky music videos, back when MTV played music. It begins with a catchy theme song, which ends with Elvira tossing her hat in the air like Mary Tyler Moore. She can be seen throughout Salem in the special. First, she's at the Witch Museum and shop and looking through all the fun Halloween things you can buy.
Look, pom-pom fun balls. That's what they used to call me in high school.
Elvira does a couple interviews on the street where she meets this horny old man.
I was just wondering if you had a big treat for me.
Oh, I sure have.
Then there's this guy Elmer who says he doesn't believe in superstitions and walks under a ladder to prove it. But the best interview comes later when she interviews Paul and his dog, who really wants a piece of that microphone.
That's Benny.
The music videos are from many bands I've never heard of. In fact, the only person I knew was Alice Cooper. And if you ever wanted 2 different songs about Norman Bates, well, you're in luck. Elvira does many comedy bits throughout, including giving her do's and don'ts for trick-or-treating, a Halloween Christmas Carol-inspired album, a cooking segment where she murders a hot dog, and a bit with a clean-cut Ozzy Osbourne discussing how rock music is satanic trash. It was a fun little holiday special that was by far my favorite thing I watched for this video. I really do miss these kinds of specials that we took for granted back then. Well, there you have it, the 2024 Halloween channel surfing video. I hope you had a bit of a spook, maybe a fright. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. For everyone who likes this video, you won't be visited by Little Mike this year. Happy Halloween, everyone.